I'm not sure that leaders in Spain have put ample emphasis on the people who are suffering the most from this recession. In the United States, for example, people who are unemployed had their unemployment benefits extended for a significant period of time during the recession, which helped see them through this very disruptive period. It doesn't seem to me that the unemployed in Spain are getting enough help, and furthermore, I think it could be beneficial even for people with jobs to see the unemployed help through a bit, because with a bit of income they will be spending. That will help stimulate the economy, get the economy back to normal more quickly. Well, I think it was a failure to take into account mechanism design that caused the financial collapse of 2008-2009 in the first place. That collapse was caused because there was a conflict between the goals of financial institutions, who were making very large loans using mostly borrowed money, and the goals of society, which is to have a stable financial system. The financial institutions weren't so much concerned about stability. They wanted more profits. And it's the role of regulators, of the governments, to make sure that financial institutions don't make loans beyond a certain point. That's a regulatory problem, which is a mechanism design problem. It was the failure to have an adequate mechanism restraining financial institutions, which was the problem in the first place. I think economic theory is very relevant and very important for the design of economic policy. I think without a good understanding of economic theory, it's almost impossible to do economic policy well. One important improvement, not so much to Spanish political institutions, but to European institutions, would be to integrate fiscal policy better. At the moment, there is no real coordination of tax and spending policy throughout the European Union, or at least throughout the monetary union, the way that the European Central Bank gives Europe a unified monetary policy. But having a unified monetary policy is not enough. For Europe to work well as an economic unit, there has to be an integrated fiscal policy too. There was a sense in which the climate change problem wasn't as acute then, because one of the few positive effects of this recession was that people reduced their demand for gas and oil, and so the amount of carbon emissions actually fell. Not because of policy, but because of economics. But now that economies are improving again, Spanish economy is improving, the American economy is improving, CO2 emissions are in danger of rising again, and so some sort of policy really has to be adopted. Now, I was very happy to see that about a week ago, President Obama announced a set of really quite significant measures to be taken in the U.S. If those measures can be taken worldwide, including in China, then I think we have a real chance at fighting this long-term problem, which, if we neglect it, will be a disaster for future generations. That's a political question. That is whether governments want to continue to spend on education at a time of economic difficulty is up to the government. They can continue to invest in education or in health, or they can cut back. In my view, cutting back on education is a mistake, because the best investment that any country can make in its future is in education. If you cut back on education, you may be saving a little bit of money now, but in the long run, you will be jeopardizing the growth and developments of your economy, of your country, in the future. I think the principles applying to Spain are the principles that apply everywhere. First, to try to liberalize markets as much as possible. That is, to make private markets work as well as they possibly can, but to introduce government regulation in those markets where without regulation there are likely to be serious distortions. So the financial market is one place where regulation is essential. And the third thing is that when times are tough, when there's a recession, the government should try to act in a counter-cyclical way. That is to try to stimulate demand, either through fiscal or monetary policy, to prevent a recession from getting deeper. Those three principles are, I think, pretty much universal. They apply to any economy.